Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to give a warm welcome to all of you who are gathered here with us today in this room and in this space. I think this is the first time that we've met in a while together like this, and also want to acknowledge those who are virtually with us as well. And we hope that as we continue to have these meetings, there'll be a time when we can all be in the same room at the same place, eating together and sharing together and strategizing together. So I'm excited about that. So just a little business we need to take care of before we start our meeting. We're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance and then we'll do our roll call. So would you please stand if you can and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we will now do a roll call, and Lynette, if you would take the roll call.
Thank you. Good afternoon. We'll start with our board members. Director Bulahan,
Here.
Desmond. Here. Gallardo,
Here.
Gog,
Yes.
Guerrero. Absent Harris.
Here.
Lauren. Absent Saragosa. Absent Vice Chair Soon. Absent Chair Jennings.
Here.
Thank you. And moving to our external members. Elisa Herrera. Here. Christine Tien. Here. Raul Martinez.
Here.
Kendra Lewis. Absent William Walker.
Here.
Ami Barnes.
Present.
Shante Arroyo. Absent Woody Deloria. Absent Marco Lizarraga. Maria Chacon-Nistet is absent, and then I'll let the record show that Vice Chair Soon is here.
Great. We have a quorum?
Sorry, yes, we do. Thank you.
Fantastic. Really good. Really good. Okay, we have a consent item that we need to take up at this time. Is there anybody who would like to speak on the consent item?
Actually, Chair Jennings, we don't have a consent item, so we're in person, so we don't need,
Okay. Oh, no problem.
no worries. We don't have to approve a remote meeting because we're in person, so.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so there is no consent item. Fantastic. Yeah, you know something, and I was going to second it. So I mean, like, can I withdraw that too? Yeah. Cool. All right. Okay, so so there's no one on public communication that would like to speak to us on something that's not on the agenda.
There's no public communication.
Perfect. Okay, let's have some fun then. We're gonna do an icebreaker. You guys good with that? Right? And so icebreaker is really like, we're trying to break this ice. We got a big bag of ice, it froze all together. We got to slam it against the wall, throw it on the floor. We got to open it up, right? So that's what we're going to do. We're going to do this icebreaker. We're going to get to know each other a little bit better. And you got to share something that maybe you would never share with anybody else except for your best friends that are in this room. You with me? Everybody with me? Okay. So what is the icebreaker? When you sit down and you want to have your best meal and you want to invite all your best friends at the table, what is it that you're going to cook and what is it that you want to eat? Your best meal. So I'm looking for what if I came to your house tonight, for lunch today, what meal would you prepare for me? What type of food? And what is the food that you love the most? You don't have to think about this long, because I had mine today. So, so I know what food I like the most. Okay.
Okay, this is gonna be really easy because I don't cook.
Sorry, Christine, if you could just push that way they
Sorry.
can hear you online.
Okay, so hello, this is Christine Tien. I don't cook, so the thing that, and the only thing I drink is water. So water is it's the one for me. And then ice cream, that's the best for me.
Hey,
Yeah,
any particular type?
chocolate
Okay.
and vanilla.
Okay. All right. Fantastic. So at the point in time that you tell me what it is that you want to eat, Everybody else's job is just to say, welcome. So we are welcoming them into this space. You have to say, I'm in. That lets me know you're done. Welcome. Okay. Ice cream and all, chocolate and vanilla. All right, okay, all right. And also, if you would share with me also, like, if you grew up drinking Kool-Aid, can you tell me what flavor you liked as a kid and what flavor you now like? So I'm adding a little bit onto it, right? If you grew up with Kool-Aid, okay? Go right ahead.
Okay, yeah, my food's gonna be chiles rellenos. Okay,
Say that again?
chiles rellenos.
Oh, okay.
What I eat. And no, I didn't grow up with Kool-Aid. I grew up with horchata and cebada in Mexico. So we didn't have Kool-Aid. That's what I grew up with.
Fantastic. Are you in?
I'm in.
Welcome.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
good deal. Okay, who's next?
Rick,
Yes.
so quick question. Are you inviting that day or I'm gonna be able to prepare this meal?
You're gonna prepare this meal for me when I come.
So it would be three different dishes.
Okay.
The first dish would be seafood gumbo.
Ooh, you got me right there.
The second dish would be red beans and rice.
Ooh,
And the third dish would be fried catfish.
fried catfish.
Yes.
Man, come on.
And
What about my Kool-Aid?
the Kool-Aid, I grew up drinking grape Kool-Aid, but I morphed to lemonade. So
Okay,
that's my favorite now.
you in?
I'm in. All
Welcome.
in.
Man, that's a meal. I might not tell you what I ate today.
I'll go,
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if that's right with you.
So you'll come next.
Did we say welcome?
Yes.
Oh, we, okay, all right. Well, so I'm not a good cook, but my wife is Italian, she's Sicilian, she's a wonderful cook, so we'd have lasagna. Probably one veggie version, one meat version, so more people would feel comfortable. Probably a Caesar salad, certainly some wine, but, non-alcoholic beverage. But I'm telling you, if I'm cooking this meal, I'm not serving Kool-Aid with it. So, as I haven't had Kool-Aid in a long time, but I'm sure I would have preferred cherry, and that's probably what I would still like today. And I'm in.
Welcome.
Well, this
Sure.
is a great question, Chair Jennings, because we just hosted some friends of ours, dear friends of ours. So I could tell you right now, the meal that we prepared, seafood gumbo. I smoked tri-tip and chicken thighs, 3 hours smoking those things, and came out very well. But to drink also beer and wine, of course, for those who like brown liquor, I have some of that too. And but for Kool-Aid, I'm a traditionalist, so fruit punch. is
Fruit
my-
punch Kool-Aid.
fruit punch.
Okay, okay.
Yes, I'm in.
Welcome. Who's next? Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'm not the main chef in the family, but my wife, she's a good host. And normally if you come over to our house, we would start out with some cold water first, and then we offer you some tea and some samosa and some sweets. A few minutes after that, I would, chat for a little bit, and then we'll make some chicken curry and some rotis. And we'll have, it depends on what time of the year it is, either we'll have some peaches for dessert, or if not peaches, we'll have kiwis. And, if you came in December, we'll have kiwis, and or anytime after October. And of course, it's not time of the year to drink any Kool-Aid at that time. Just to keep you warm, I would offer you some Crown Royal.
Oh.
I'm in.
And I'm in too.
So we got two of y'all in. Welcome. I know you're thinking. I can see you thinking. Please.
So it's that time of year for pozole, which is
There.
my comfort meal. And so after this meeting, that's where I think I'm going to be going. But I don't have time to cook it. But,
I'm going with you.
yeah, pozole all the way. And then in terms of Kool-Aid, grape Kool-Aid, for sure.
As a kid and as
As
an
a
adult?
kid, no, can't have the sugar anymore. But no, as a kid, grape Kool-Aid. But I'm in.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Oh, yeah.
Let's do Jill. Jill, you ready?
I'm ready. Greetings from Washington, D.C. Out here with the Placer Business Alliance. So all is well. And I'm loving these stories, except for if I only get served water, I don't know about that one. That was a no-go.
We love you though.
But like that, I am not the cook in our family. My husband's family had a restaurant when growing up, and so he loves to cook. And he's that guy that would go to the store every day to pick what he's making for that meal. But definitely, I think my favorite when he does is dry ribs. He's a big rib person, and his dry rub ribs are at the top of my list. And I was a huge Kool-Aid kid, and that's what we had until we got a little bit older. And if we got really lucky or we went on a picnic, we would get Shasta, the black cherry Shasta canned soda. That was like a big deal. And I don't know about you guys, but when we got lemonade, it was that frozen can that you added 3 cups of water with the frozen can of lemonade or orange juice. And I'm feeling bad that I haven't had Kool-Aid for a really long time, and I would still drink it now. And I'm in.
Welcome. Welcome. All right, we're still waiting on a few other folks. Yes, sir.
Well, I would like to cook, make some pozole, but it would turn out terribly. So I think what I would do is, so if you came over, maybe on Sunday to watch some football, have some sourdough. I'm making some sandwiches with some cold cuts, some salami, mortadella, sourdough, and then probably a selection of beer and potato salad. So that's sort of my go-to. Lots of maybe diluted fruit punch Kool-Aid when I was a kid, and High C was sort of a step up from that too. So yeah.
You in?
I'm all in.
Welcome. Welcome.
So, in my home, you will get a number of dishes. First, we start off with champagne. Many bottles of champagne will be available to you. It'll be either red or the white, the dry, the brut. And then we'll also have a little lemonade available. And you'll have, for appetizers, we'll have cheese and salami and other cuts that you may like. And then for a meal, you'll have chile colorado, tamales, rice, beans, and green beans, salad, maybe a Caesar salad. And for dessert, you'll have pan dulce as part of it, or coffee cake, and wedding cookies, if you just wanted to have a little bit of something. And for a drink there, you'll need the coffee to wake up and get back safely. I'm all in.
Welcome. Welcome. Danielle, what's the favorite meal?
Oh,
You got me started on this food thing.
I know, always the food. All my icebreakers are food related. I love preparing baked mac and cheese. For Christmas last year, I made it with lobster and like several cheeses, and it's just chef's kiss. But I love when people make me nachos. Nachos are my all-time favorite food. I want like a big pan of them, baked in the oven, comfort food to the 100th degree. And I grew up on Juicy Juice. I didn't drink Kool-Aid. My mom was like, Juicy Juice is 100% juice, so it's healthier. So it was the like fruit punch Juicy Juice was what I grew up on. And I'm in.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Ari.
I was thinking, hi, everyone. I was thinking. So I would say 3 dishes. You're going to get a little plant-based action. So these would be vegan cabbage roll sausages with dill sauce, baked with a side of red beans and rice and collard greens. To drink, there would be a lot of wine, copious amounts of wine, red or white. In terms of Kool-Aid wasn't necessarily my jam, but strawberry soda was. I love strawberry soda with everything, so that's would be my favorite.
Are you in?
Yes, I'm in.
Welcome. Come on.
Okay, I was trying to think about it, but it would be beef stew with white rice, and I know how to make rice without a rice cooker. So anyway, my parents taught me that. As far as drinks, because like now I drink that sparkling flavored water that Bel Air sells. I used to drink soda, but I figured now I better cut that out. You know, it's health reasons. and I like Gunther's ice cream.
Ooh, Gunther's, I like that.
That's all I could think of at this point.
Tell me you in.
Okay, I'm in.
Welcome, welcome. Who's up next? Yes, there you go.
Yeah, I'm so hungry now for some.
I know.
But if we're supposed to be cooking, the one thing I can make, I love a good old American red-blooded filet mignon, cooked over charcoal in the backyard, along with grilled asparagus and my grandmother's mashed potatoes that she puts sour cream already mixed in it, which is lovely. And then, of course, like a couple other people, my go-to for Kool-Aid when I was a kid was grape flavor. And that's, even now, if I were to drink it, I haven't drank it in years, I'd probably go to the grape. Until they start making Scotch flavored Kool-Aid, I'm going with grape.
Wait a minute, now that's an idea we need to process. We need to talk about that one later. Welcome. Welcome. Who from this table? I got everybody on both sides? Left, right? Who am I missing from the? Oh, there you go.
I think I would get my mom's help, but I would want to make like a, yeah, I know lots of people do that tacos, but like the food itself. And then as a kid, I like the toy that came with a little bottle that was shaped. And I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about. But yeah, the fruit punch.
Fantastic. And you're in. Welcome, welcome. Who am I missing? Come on,
All right,
staff.
I'm going quick. All right. I'm not actually the cook in the house. So my husband would probably smoke salmon and then prepare some like seasonal, squash or potatoes or something to go with it. And then maybe he'd have me make a salad. I make the salad. That's my contribution. And then maybe I get my mother-in-law to make a pecan pie because
Okay.
that's my favorite.
Mine too, by the way.
All
I'm
right,
with you.
sweet. I'm in.
Just for Christmas, so you can remember that.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. I'll put in the order with her. Okay, yeah.
You're
And-
in.
Yeah, and I'm in.
Welcome.
Thanks.
So I like to make ice cream to de-stress from work, so I would definitely have everybody over for a big ice cream party. And when I was a kid, we didn't have Kool-Aid, so I had the canned orange juice like Jill had in the frozen thing. Three things of water. Boy, it wasn't very good, but I'm in.
Welcome. All right, Lynette, what you got?
I was paying attention to everyone's food, so grape Kool-Aid for sure as a kid. And I had my kids try it once and told them it was purple juice, and they like it too. We don't drink it much often, but for food, probably chili and cornbread. It's my family's favorite. So just simple, very simple, informal,
And filling.
and filling. Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm in.
Welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
James Corliss, what you got?
Well, I gotta tell you, I'm with Jill Gallardo here. It's 6:20. It's dinner time, and I have never been hungry. So it's not fair. My dish would probably be an old family dish where I grew up in England called Lancashire hot pot. It's pretty simple. It's basically lamb, onions, potatoes, and carrots, and you put a nice potato stuff on the top, and you brown that. And it'd probably have to go with like a really good an ale or a beer or a glass of white wine. And I'm in.
Welcome. Is Rosie? Oh, I'm sorry. I got you on both places. That kind of confused me a little bit. All right, so I'm gonna tell you mine so that I think we'll close it out with that. think I'm final? Yes? So I had it today. I went to Fixins. In case you haven't been to Fixins, I encourage you to go there. It's in Oak Park on the corner of 34th and Broadway. And it's a Southern style restaurant. And today I had oxtails. I had rice with gravy. And because it's oxtail and rice with gravy, you need something to sweeten it up. So I had yams to sweeten it up. Just give me a little bit of sweet taste, right? And because you get too much sweet taste, you got to have something to counter the sweet taste. So then I had greens, collard greens. So we had the vegetables, we had starch, we had all that good stuff. So, and then the Kool-Aid, as a kid growing up, I was a lover of grape Kool-Aid. And we used to get those little packages for $5, and then you could put the water in it, right? And it was less water than actually Kool-Aid. I mean, you know how that worked because we wanted the flavor. But it wasn't the quantity, we just wanted the sugar. And so now I mix my Kool-Aids, and I do the grape and the green Kool-Aid, and I put it together. And it's just incredible. And Fixins is the only restaurant I know in town, in Sacramento, in the region, that actually serves Kool-Aid, you know, with their meals. And so if you get your Kool-Aid fix and you need a fix, Fixins is the place to go. And they have other meals as well that I think you'll like. And they always say, do you want dessert? But after you've eaten that incredible meal, there's no room for dessert. So with that, I am in.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I got
Thank
one
you.
question though.
Okay.
What color is the Kool-Aid when you mix the purple and the green? What does that look like?
So the blue, it's the blue. I should have
Oh.
said blue. So it's the blue and the green, and it turns purple.
Oh, got it.
Yeah. So, but I do a lot of mixing with the Kool-Aids. You know what I mean? Like, it's better that way. My mother-in-law taught me that. You know, when you mix your drinks, put orange juice in, and then you put a little bit of soda, like lime soda, and she just mixes everything, and she knows how to do it. She's 94 years old. She knows how to mix a drink, but it's not alcoholic, non-alcoholic. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that exercise, and it gives us a little bit of knowledge about each other and makes things fun when you come to some of these meetings and get to know each other and what you have to eat or what you want to eat. And so I hope you enjoyed the exercise. You know, when we get together like this, a lot of the things that we do is based on trust and understanding each other. And, you know, these kind of exercises help us to kind of maybe break down the work that we do every single day and get to know each other a little bit better. And so, you know, it would be my pleasure to sit down with each of you over a meal and really get to know you better in a way that we can't do at these meetings. And so at any point in time that you have an extra seat at your table, please let me know. Extra 2 seats would be good too, because my wife will want to come too. So, but I hope that we will spend more time getting to know each other outside of these meetings and getting to know each other's culture and getting to know each other, what our priorities are and what's important to us, and get to know each other in ways, because it all contributes to the work that we're doing in race, equity, and inclusion. So thanks for participating with me today and spending that time. I think it was time well spent. So now I want to do a recap of what we've done so far, because it's been a while since we've met. And so as we do that, last year in 2022, SACOG Board adopted the Racial Equity Statement of Change and Commitment. And in that statement, we acknowledge that the role of federal, state, and local policies in creating racial disparities in health, wealth, education, transportation, housing, and other aspects of life, we said SACOG had an obligation to reduce these inequities through our work. So we committed that we would work towards a just and equitable region that addresses these historical wrongs, where race is no longer a predictor of life outcomes and where health and economic outcomes for all people are improved. We also created a racial equity action plan. I had the honor of chairing that prior working group that created that plan. And this year and next year, our working group, all of us, are here to help implement that action plan. And that's one of our primary roles in the REI working group. In the development of our racial equity action plan, we listened to board members, local government officials, CBOs, business groups, to learn what these groups think SACOG as a government agency can do to reduce disparities through its work. They said that if SACOG wants to reduce health, wealth, and other disparities, we need to deepen our understanding of the different communities in the region. At the SACOG board, each of us represents a unique community, and we are supposed to make decisions about regional policy and funding that affects each of those communities. But how do we do that authentically, equitably, if we don't build some understanding of each other and each other's unique communities? This racial equity work we're doing will eventually lead to policy and funding decisions. But first, we have to start with listening. I always tell all the kids that I talk to that there was a reason that God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. We are to listen twice as much as we talk. The more we listen, the more we learn. And so I think it's really important that we do a lot of listening in our communities. Racial equity work we're doing, it will eventually lead to policy and funding, as I said. And then there's a saying that you have to crawl before you walk. That's what we're doing in this REI work. We're actually crawling. We're taking baby steps first. We're getting solid, common understanding of what we mean by meaningful community engagement. Because real equity work, which supports the needs and hopes of people, starts with knowing how to meet people where they're at, really listening to what they say they need, and then supporting them in filling that need. I'd like to ask our facilitator, Danielle DeRuiter Williams. I know I'm butchering that. I hope I'm not
Very
too
close.
badly. To walk us through the agenda for today. Danielle is our facilitator, and she does an excellent job, and she will walk us through our agenda for today.
Awesome. Danielle DeRuiter Williams. So you're real close. It's good to see you all. It's good to see you in person. Our agenda in terms of items is relatively simple, but the content that we're covering is not always so simple. And so the purpose and the focus of today's time together is to really start to get clear and aligned on how we're defining meaningful community engagement. And so we're going to take a look at a couple of examples of regional sort of cases and programs that are in existence and use those to start to identify where those overlaps are, where maybe the gaps are. And this is really in service of employing in terms of the implementation of the Racial Equity Action Plan, right? So the clearer we are on what meaningful community engagement means, the more effective we can be in implementing that plan. And so this is kind of moving us in that direction. And then we'll also take a look at the Engage, Empower, and Implement program as an additional sort of case study on meaningful community engagement. And Rosie will share a little bit about that from SACOG staff. Sound good? Okay. So with that said, what we wanted to do was create an opportunity for anyone who attended. Did anyone who's in the room today attend either the Roseville Board workshop on community-based collaboratives or the Yuba County Board workshop on improving public health and safety? Anyone here? Yeah? A couple folks? Cool. So not only do we want to hear a little bit of like your reflections from that, but we all should have taken some time to view those videos about it. And so what we're curious to know after maybe we hear just some general reflections is really starting to get at, when it comes to meaningful community engagement, what are some commonalities that you maybe notice in the approaches taken in both workshop examples? So let's kind of pause there. Any general reflections from those workshops that you all attended or viewed the videos for? What did you notice?
I think on both of them, I noticed that.
Oh, sorry, can you turn your?
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
On both of them, I noticed the value of not sticking to what you think you might be hearing, what people might need, and listening with an open mind, a blank slate, and an open mind of what they have, because both of them had examples of things where they had to change their approach to make it much more effective, which is, of course, why they're there in the first place. And then also the value of actually getting out into the neighborhoods. The Yuba County example specifically, they mentioned how they saw children walking to school with flooded on both sides, where they're walking down the traffic lane to get to school, which that would get your attention really quick. But you can talk about it all day long, but if you get down there and get your boots on the ground, it makes a huge difference. So,
Yeah.
you're welcome.
Go ahead.
I noticed in the Roseville one, like they like try to include the actual community that they were working in, try to get more buy-in from the residents. That's what I noticed.
Yeah.
Instead of like trying to do everything like without including them.
What are some other reflections from folks? Go ahead.
The two things I noticed is, I think for both, is the impact of history. How both cities had to wrestle with the history of how decisions were made and how they had to do a culture shift in order to redo that. Like how infrastructure was done, how their governments made decisions. So the history piece, and then the other piece along the same lines is what you offered as well, is that they trusted folks who were in the community to help make the bridge for them, and that they were willing to take a step back and work with community care holders or organizations that were already established within the community to help do the engagement.
Thank you. Go ahead, Raul.
Yeah, just building on that, that was one of the things that really struck me was sort of government sort of maybe providing some like important backbone support, sort of, but it's kind of in the background, right? But letting sort of community lead, but letting community lead through sort of not just trusted organizations, but in formats that might work for them. So maybe like this type of room wouldn't necessarily be as sort of comfortable for community members, but maybe there's other kinds of rooms and environments in which they might be more likely to participate. I do think that in both cases there was sort of data that someone came up with, right? Sort of like to look at potential needs, and I think the value in that was it's something for the community and the neighborhoods to respond to and say, oh, well, that works for me, or no, that doesn't work at all. Actually, what we need is lighting in our community. So I think having that as a reactionary sort of starting point, I think was helpful, in addition to sort of creating community-friendly spaces where people that maybe don't participate as much civically are encouraged and allowed to do so.
In something you just said, I'm curious, is there something about going to community too early and too late that's important to maybe consider? So in the examples that we took a look at, like where in the process was community engaged? Was it when things were already kind of baked, or early enough where folks could still engage and shape the ultimate outcomes? Yeah, go ahead.
I think when I watched, it was Yuba, it seemed like they'd already baked the plan and they were just sharing it with the people what they were going to do, whereas Roseville kind of checked their assumption and backed up and say, oh, let's look at what we don't know. And they moved forward with the community after that. So it seems like one had already went through this whole historical perspective and they made the plan, this is what we're gonna do, where Roseville, which was interesting, said, hey, let's back up a little bit. Let's get the people involved and see what we really need to do.
Other thoughts and reflections? Real quick. Were you going to push your button?
Well, while you read my mind?
I see it in your face.
Well, to me, it's not a question of time, and I'm going to have to speak from my experience as a Mexican. because I'm not a Latino. I'm a Mexican first, okay? In Mexico, we don't call ourselves Latinos, we call ourselves Mexicanos. So this whole Latino thing is an American concept that has come about, you know, from the American language. Now, speaking in my community, it's not a matter of timing of when you're going to involve the community. It doesn't matter when, but get it involved. For instance, you know, and secondly, our community is not homogeneous. So because you've involved some Mexican Americans that speak fluent English and they were raised here, you forgot the rest. They were not raised here, they came in later and don't speak English. And there are many of those, especially in the community where I live. We have nearly 50%, you know, Mexicans or Latinos. There's some Central Americans, so they are, you know, the Latino American people, but the Mexican, there's a sector that doesn't speak Spanish. And we face things like currently, I'm in the planning commission, and I have to hear sometimes things that I hate. Okay? Like some people, fellow commissioners, complaining about all this little things on the corners that are selling tamales and that are selling this and selling that. Hey, that's better than stealing. That's work. That's entrepreneurship at the level they can handle it. So when do you get them involved? Whenever you can, you do it. You do it now. So complaining about those things that I have to hear without reaching out and understanding that they're making a living, and that I will admit one thing. Yeah, maybe having a permit and making them have some healthy, you know, approaches to providing that. I don't mind that. But complaining about them doing that, it it almost hurts. You know, it doesn't just anger, it kind of hurts, the lack of understanding and sensitivity. So I think that it's not a matter of time, it's, for God's sake, start whenever you can start, but get it started. Okay, and understand the community that is not homogeneous.
Thank you.
Yeah, you read my mind.
Other reflections?
So, I would say, being one of the organizations that worked with Roseville early on, you definitely need the community input, but recognize that if you involve an organization like ours, we represent the community, so you're gonna need to give us time to go back into the community and get their input and their thoughts, because that's what we do. We don't go forward with our plan and try to represent everybody because we can't represent everybody. So you will need to build in the time for, you know, a month to 2 months to be able to get that population, get their input. We've had people come to us and say, can you do a focus group in 2 weeks? No, we will not, and we cannot. So we want to make sure it's genuine input and that their needs are provided to you for the best possible solution, but that takes time.
Can I ask a question on the comments you just made?
Yeah.
Because I'm just trying to figure out where is the reason for that is, where does trust come in to all of that? As far as not being able to get it done in that time frame? How important is that to that?
By and large, you know, because we have the trust of the community already, we can generally turn things around quickly. But what tends to happen is if we don't understand the need and we don't get the time to read the questions ahead of time and we don't understand your intent, we're not going to go to our community until we know that we can trust you. And then you're using our trust with our relationship to get that input, right? So I'm saying that the trust is important to establish. And sometimes if you work with an organization that doesn't go back to the community, it doesn't ask, watch out. You may not get what you need.
Gotcha.
Yeah, go ahead, Ami.
And I appreciate that. What came to mind for me when you were speaking and sharing was the meaningful piece and how we're defining that. And does engagement actually stop? And should it stop? And I think that's, I think a trap that as government agencies we fall into, that that the engagement, we need to get it because it's more of a check the box kind of, we need to do that so that we can make sure we can get this done, our council see it, there's input. Oh, good, you went to the community and then there's no wraparound, there's no, thank you for your, input. Here's what we learned, here's how we're moving forward, here's how you can stay engaged. So it made me think about, wow, we may need to rethink about what meaningful is and that it's an ongoing process instead of a pre-work or it has a time frame. Like, what does it look like if it's an ongoing? Because eventually you're gonna need to go out to the community again for another project. So how can we make those intersecting and linked to where it's truly authentic and relationship building? And folks see that they are part of the decision-making process on an ongoing basis. And then also at different levels and at different times. Because we don't always go to the community and say, it may be more thinking about how we go and communicate. Is it to provide information? Is it to provide information and then get it back? Is it then to come to consensus? Like, we also have to be clear about why we're going out to community instead of just constantly extracting wealth or information and then it stops. Because the community feels that, I think, that impact.
So something I'm hearing, a couple of things that I'm hearing. So there's creating more of a relationship with community. So not just transactional, like, we're back again, put some stickers on a map, tell us what to do. And then going off and doing it and not ever coming back, right? With like, here's what we did, here's how we incorporated things, right? There's just the very foundation of equity, which is transformational approaches versus these sorts of transactional ones, right? I'm also hearing to be really clear on what the ask is or what the purpose of the engagement is. So are we informing folks? Are we actually asking them to weigh in? The worst thing you can do is like say, yeah, we're going to take your perspectives in, and then there's actually no place for them to live because that erodes trust over time. There's also how you engage folks who are sort of not necessarily gatekeepers, but folks who are sort of ambassadors to broader communities, right? And how you ensure that that relationship is built on trust and is reciprocal, because folks don't want to burn up their social capital engaging their folks either. Did I capture a lot of what you all shared? Other thoughts?
I think the only other thought that I would share is that sometimes we see when we get grants, that we take a grant into the community and it's for a specific purpose. And then when the grant runs out, the purpose didn't run out, but the money ran out. And then there's a void. And I kind of relate that to, our human capital with people and relationships that we have. If we don't sustain those relationships, then another relationship will start somewhere else. And that relationship that we have with them is no longer existing. And that hurts a lot of times because people they want relationships, they want to be involved, especially if it was something that was positive, right? But when it left, because the money left, so we have to watch ourselves when we go into communities with money and promises and things like that, and then we don't fulfill those. So, I learned in sales that the first sale begins with the sale of yourself. If you can't convince somebody that you mean more than what you're selling and the product and the service that you have, it's you that people are buying. And so when you walk out of that room and you're no longer there anymore, and you don't bring that human capital to them, they've missed something now. It's now a void in their life, and that can lead to mistrust.
I was just going to make a comment that you're absolutely correct, and we've been very fortunate. I'm the executive director of La Cooperativa Campesina. What we do is we serve farm workers throughout the whole state of California. We've been in business for over 55 years. And one of the things that we offer to the government is that we have the trust of the people. Whenever there's anything that happens in the state, they come to us, to our local offices. We have offices all over Greenfield, Soledad, everywhere you can think of, Calexico, Central, Coachella, everywhere, in the northern part of California too. But we've been there for over 50 years. So they trust us. They don't trust the governmental looking offices because 70% of our people are not documented. But they will come to us and they trust us. We've been very fortunate that one of the things we learned by accident, it wasn't by design, because you are absolutely correct, Wes, that in order to be able to do that, you have to sustain yourself with state and federal funding. You cannot rely on local funding for anything. And that was has really allowed us to have that, existence for so long, to develop the trust of the communities, the farm worker communities that come to us. But you're right, you have to have some kind of a sustainability of the funding and providing those services for them to learn to trust you and come to you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just reflecting on all that's been said, starting back to the reflections of Yuba County and Roseville, I just feel like, the old days or before, lack of a better term, government workers would do their jobs and they did it in a vacuum because, the outreach was more of a checking the box type of thing, and not malicious or anything, but just everybody's trying to do a good job and get a product done. And then fast forward, I think, whether it's Roseville, I think SACOG did this with the MTP, and I know many of our cities are doing the same. We're going to where the community is, right? We're going to the public events so we can reach folks and get their input there. Because like you started, Chair Jennings, about having friends over at your house, you don't always have to be the host. I mean, I want to come to your house too. And so that time together, I think, is how you build trust. And so as a mutual exchange, right? Whether it's meals or, you don't always have to come here. We can go, the city, counties can go out to you, out to the community and ask your opinions and thoughts. But also the key thing is also time together. So it's not a one-time thing. It's, over a course of time where, that relationship and trust is built. It's not something that can be rushed. It's something that takes investment, patience, and diligence. So that's it.
So a couple threads I'm hearing are meeting people where they are, right? Playing in their court. There's also this piece around engaging with folks in a sustained way over time and not presuming that it's going to happen overnight, and also ensuring that you define meaningful by the outcome that you're trying to get to, not what you can accomplish in 2 weeks, which is the conversation I have all the time. What are you actually trying to do? Can't do that in 2 weeks, right? So really setting the outcome aligned with what you're trying to accomplish, and then build your timeline from there. The other piece that I heard in that is the historic relationship that folks might have with government broadly might be kind of a negative one. And so that resistance that you might come up against shouldn't stop you, but you should be mindful of it. When I used to work in the city of San Francisco and I used to engage with folks in Bayview Hunters Point, they would be like, we don't want to talk to planning. All this history with the city, they would say with the city, right? Even if it had nothing to do with the planning department, it did, but even if it didn't, right? And so not letting that resistance stop you, but really being mindful of it and working to sort of dismantle that relationship and some of that dynamic. Raul, did you want to chime in?
I also just wanted to make an observation about the Roseville example, which relied on Invest Health funding, right? So that's funding that comes from Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. So you've got philanthropic funding. So it, maybe a little bit more flexibility in the funding too, that allowed for sort of slowing down, kind of the slowing down, the pivots that we're talking about here. You know, as I think about our own work, so I work within Placer County Health and Human Services, 5/6 of our budget comes from state and federal sources with, you know, specific scopes of work, and sometimes specific scopes of work around community engagement that is less flexible than the examples that we heard about. And so I think, you know, it's, you know, nice to, you know, bring the arms of the social impact sector together, so philanthropy, government, nonprofits, and if, you know, curious about the role, thinking more about the role that philanthropy can play, and actually creating that flexibility to encourage sort of more community engagement, and maybe for government to have a little more sort of practice sessions at becoming better at engaging with community. So anyway, that's just a reflection from just thinking about the Roseville example, maybe how it's a little bit different than some others. Yeah. Thanks.
Is there anything in either of the examples or others that you've seen related to how we build capacity in community to sort of continue the work once we've stepped away? Does that resonate with you all? How do you ensure that folks who are sort of carry this work forward are able to carry it forward?
I think for those of us who did the South Sacramento tour just recently, you have a situation where a school district shuts down a school, number of schools, and you have a community-based organization that comes in and takes over that school and starts really doing the research that's necessary to fill the void of that school shutting down. And when we toured the whole school, it was amazing to me how much work they had done with the community to understand the void of shutting that school down and the needs of the community and how they were filling the community needs, and bringing in other nonprofits to help them to do so. It wasn't just one nonprofit working together. Sometimes we can get funny as one nonprofit, and, you know, we think we can do it all. But they proved to me that even nonprofits that have different types of charters or different types of focuses, that they could come together to meet the needs of the entire community. I saw fishing poles in one room, and, you know, as a kid, that was something I never did. I never fished. I'm not a fisherman today because I never fished as a kid. And I've missed out on one of the most important things I could be learning in life, which is patience. And I have none because I never learned how to fish, right? But they had fishing poles in there in that room. And, you know, there's a group called Hooked on Fishing. And that group takes kids out and teaches them all the life lessons of fishing, right? But just to see what they've done in this area that had this huge void, from a school closing to a nonprofit organization coming in, understanding the needs of the community and working with others to fill that void. So we just saw that example just last week for those of us who were able to go and see that. And it was just, you know, La Familia Counseling, I have to give them a lot of credit for the work that they continue to do every day to make a difference in that community. So just wanted to kind of bring that to the surface, that not just the two organizations that we either went to or watched watched the meetings, but the third one, which was the South Area tour that we just went on. I was really proud of that agency and the work that they've done to bring different people together in order to serve the community.
Any other characteristics, examples, sort of pieces or conditions that meaningful community engagement is defined by you all? Yeah, go ahead.
So, yeah, I came from government as well. I've been on the nonprofit side, government, and also philanthropic side. And it's really wonderful to see, like, I always say the change in how government is reaching out to community. I'm super encouraged by that. I think like for authentic community engagement, the first thing government has to do is to acknowledge the wrongs that government has done on different ethnic communities. And then I often hear about community folks saying government, like processes are very extractive, like, they reach in and like, let me get a sample of this, let me get this, the data, and then it doesn't come back. So that's, and I know you all know this, but that long-term relationship building, I think, is just so important.
I was going to say just something real quick. I mean, when people engage with us, with government, they're making an investment, right, of their time, their thoughts, their efforts, sometimes really laying themselves bare about how past government decisions have negatively impacted them. I think we also have to make sure in continued engagement, which we've been talking about here, it can't just be a one and done, it can't just be a check the box exercise, but we need to show people how that investment is paying off for them. Really, this is how you influence this project. This is how the community is continuing to influence this project. So that's come up a lot, for me and my very limited experience in politics. People want to know, okay, what good has this done? And it's really important to help people understand how their engagement pays off for them.
So show, not tell, is a little bit of what I'm hearing. Go ahead.
I was going to, and maybe this did come up, but I didn't see it necessarily in the videos, and based on my knowledge of Roseville, I don't think this came up as much, but something, sometimes governments rely on sort of surveying or sort of flash votes, right, sort of as data collection. So I make this comment as doing applied research, sort of an evaluation in a past life, and so oftentimes it's seen as we're collecting quantitative data, and so that's seen as rigorous, right? So, and rigor carries, I think, a value label for some, and I think what we saw was that actually maybe we need to think of rigor in a different way, and I think what the example showed is that, engaging with communities, hearing from them in their own words. So Chair Jennings, you talked about we have 2 ears, right? Sort of listening to folks and maybe not just relying on, maybe there's a place for sort of flash vote and sort of, collecting data in that way, but maybe sort of stopping and listening to folks and thinking about who's in the room and who's not in the room. And I think that you saw a lot of intention in Yuba County and in Roseville. So maybe that is just as, if not more rigorous.
Yeah, go ahead. And then we'll start to summarize some of these.
So another thing I often hear is, when government is like reaching out, like I think in this case, probably Health Education Council and Roseville probably, I'm guessing, gave Health Education Council a stipend, like a grant to kind of help them, work with community. And a lot of times, like I do hear like the smaller nonprofits who are very much like grassroots, like they're down in the trenches, and they oftentimes feel like they don't get the funding, that the large nonprofits are getting the funds, and you probably heard this too. And then the subcontracts, it could, they go to the smaller organizations, and it could be in a form of a gift card or something like that, but they're doing a lot of the work. So that's just something that, I think we all have to think about in a better way. Yeah.
Thank you. Any final burning characteristics? Yeah, go ahead. Your button.
Oops, sorry.
I want you to be heard.
You mentioned something that, that she's also alluded to now, and when you were talking about, you mentioned it, and I kind of was holding back from a capacity. I've been around many years. So one of the big struggles that we have as nonprofits today is there used to be a lot of funds for capacity building and sustainability of that. They're gone. Yeah. And that's a huge problem. one of the things that we also have to do is, as some of us that are nonprofits, but also work with government one way or another, that we also have to educate our people as to what government can and cannot do. Because there was a time when the local government, through redevelopment agency, could provide a lot of help for housing. That doesn't exist anymore. There was a time that we had revenue sharing, and the cities were almost rich, okay? Because, and I don't know if you know or remember revenue sharing, but the principle of revenue sharing was that all communities and citizens pay to the federal government income taxes, and the cities deserve to get some of that back. That was revenue sharing. And that was a beautiful thing that permitted cities to do a lot more than they can now. And all of that is gone. So on the one hand, we have to educate our people that they have to hit government, but at the same time, how much can we get out of government? And we have to serve also that role for the nonprofits. And the capacity building need is huge. And a small organization, it's not like my organization. My organization is kind of big statewide. So we have to do a lot of advocacy at the state level, at the federal level, to sustain the funding and the longitude of our services that we're going to provide. And in that sense, yes, I feel a lot for the small nonprofits. Sometimes I'm able to include some of them, but not all the time. But that lack of capacity building, it's really painful in terms of providing the services that our community needs.
And some of what you're also speaking to is what are those sort of upstream conditions that make doing what you're just speaking to more difficult, right? So larger policy changes and how those have shaped the ability for not only nonprofits, but also governments to be able to engage with community in a way that hopefully lines up with these sorts of principles of meaningful community engagement that we're talking about, yeah. Okay. So now is where we start to summarize some of the points. These are not in order, but the way that I'm going to sort of talk through it is meaningful community engagement, blah, 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 right? And if that sounds good to you or if that resonates with you, even if it's not the perfect words, we can wordsmith them later. I want to hear like, you say something, you come up with a nice phrase for people to say. You could say, I'm in. We could just keep that thread going all day. This is not a vote or anything. So meaningful community engagement acknowledges the history of harm and past experiences with government. Yeah?
I'm in.
I'm in, right? Meaningful community engagement builds on a foundation of trust and reciprocity with community.
I'm double in.
Double in. You're in? Okay. Meaningful community engagement meets people where they are and really seeks to get on the ground and understanding what those true needs are from the people who are experiencing it. Yeah? People who are closest to the pain or closest to the power. That's a shorter, pithier way to say it. Good, meaningful community engagement recognizes that community is not a homogeneous term, that there is a variety of different needs, experiences, challenges, realities, irrespective of if you maybe look the same. Is that true? Okay. Sorry, Casey, you are like, you see why I asked you? I'm like, I'm empowering Casey to do this. Meaningful community engagement demonstrates its impact or returns back to community to demonstrate and show how their contributions have contributed to decision-making or plans or changes. Yeah?
Yeah.
All right. Meaningful community engagement is clear on what the ask is or the way in which you seek to engage community. So folks know what they're signing up for or what their perspectives mean. Yeah? Seeing nods? Okay. We should have coffee at these meetings. I feel like folks are running out of steam. You want to amend that?
I'm not quite sure if this is it's not necessarily an opposition or contradictory, but sometimes it's like, you can sort of, and so fellow colleagues sort of help me here, because we're just working on a first advisory committee to our own department on sort of equity principles, on equity, I should say. And so part of what we've said is we're walking on the road, but we don't know where it's actually leading us. And so maybe it's not contradictory, and so to the extent that you can, you want to sort of let people know, but sometimes you don't know, especially in this work. And so anyway, it just came up for me when you said that, like, I don't know where that lives. So yeah.
I like that. I don't think it's in contradiction. Did you want to say something? This is how we're hoping to define it for the implementation of the REAP.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. To that last point, I think there's something in there around meaningful community engagement is like iterative and open to evolving over time, right? There's an openness there, not necessarily like we have all the answers and this is the pathway forward. Does that sort of capture it?
Yeah, and I think some of us like to have like the final version of the document, and others are more comfortable with the draft sort of say, and maybe I'm a little more comfortable with it, saying draft as the watermark, so, yeah.
Yeah, I think you're bringing up something that it's always been in my mind. Again, it's a reflection on my age, but I've heard so many concepts and terms and everything throughout the years. And today is equity. That's the big thing, okay? All right, fine. You're going to have a committee advisory committee on equity. So what is equity? Equity to somebody like me is they're dealing, not with equality, but inequality. I always used to say when I was still young, a long time ago, don't give me this, I'm being treated equal. When you give equality to unequals and you don't compensate for the inequality. I said, compensating for that, that's what equity should be. And the way I used to explain it was, okay, take a look at me, and take a look at you. You can run a mile in probably 4 or 5 minutes, right? But me, because I had polio on one leg, I can get to that point, but it's going to take me 10 minutes walking. Okay, so how do you compensate for that? You can't set the equal thing for me and you. So compensate for their inequality, and I think that's what equity should be. And I think we need to explain that to people that are going to involve themselves in equity building.
So there's something there about meaningful community engagement, and I actually had sort of looks for gaps and seeks to really create a bridge between the current state, the ideal state, and walks on that path with community, right? Meaningful community engagement invests time in the long run, right? So this isn't just a tactical solution, right? Meaningful community engagement is, again, leaning on that foundation of trust in a sustained way in the long run. Is that right? Are you in? Okay.
The last one.
Yeah, invested in the long term. Yep. Okay. 2 more that I jotted down. Meaningful community engagement not only acknowledges the broader structural barriers for community, but also seeks to address those in those approaches. So this notion of, I think this overlaps with sort of meeting people where they are. Asking someone to always come to your house is not going to work for everybody. So there's something about placing everything in context and then allowing that context to sort of shape your approaches. So meaningful community engagement, to put a finer point on things, acknowledges and addresses structural barriers and mitigates for those. Yeah? That sound right? Are you in? Okay. The last one I have, and I think this is a little specific, but I think it's really relevant for the context of SACOG. And a lot of what you all were saying about there was funding, now there's not funding, how do we sustain it in a meaningful way? Meaningful community engagement considers and employs or goes after, we're not wordsmithing today, funding approaches or resource approaches that support all of these other things, right? So it's not just like we aspire to do the thing, we're also looking for opportunities to make the thing true, right? So it's matching up, sort of creating the conditions where all of these things can happen. Does that make sense? Yeah? Are we good with that as a principle? Okay, let's take just a couple of minutes and I'll talk through them really quickly again. We can wordsmith them. If there's anything missing, now's the time to add it. And then we'll go ahead and shift and see how maybe these show up in the example of the engage, empower, and implement. Thank you. All right. Meaningful community engagement acknowledges history of harm and past experiences with government. Yeah? Okay. Meaningful community engagement builds on a foundation of trust and reciprocity with community. Meaningful community engagement gets on the ground, understands the needs of people in community. Meaningful community engagement recognizes that community is not homogeneous, nor are the needs, challenges, opportunities, right? Meaningful community engagement demonstrates impact and returns to the community to show that impact, so showing and not telling. Meaningful community engagement is clear on what the ask to community is, so how and why folks are being engaged and how that will shape ultimately the outcomes. Meaningful community engagement is iterative and open to evolving over time as needs change. Meaningful community engagement looks for gaps and seeks to create a bridge. The one thing I want to add to that is also looks around to see who's not at the table, right? Meaningful community engagement invests in the long run and this sort of relational foundation over time. Meaningful community engagement acknowledges and addresses structural barriers and mitigates for those. And it considers and goes after resources and approaches that support all of these other principles and conditions. Is there anything glaringly missing? Oh, all right, go ahead.
Somewhere in there, we need to have a thread of transparency. So I don't think that it needs to be its own bullet point, but how do we make sure that we know that transparency is present in every single one of these items? And then also, at what point do we talk about meaningful community engagement, sharing, making sure that they know that we share power with the agencies in charge, right? So it's often, you do your thing, you go to the next step, you come back and tell the people what you've done, but at what point are you sharing power with them? When are you telling them this is your project? Because if you're not going to share power, why come to the community in the first place?
So meaningful community engagement seeks to share and transfer power over time. Yeah? Does that could work? And then we'll get the transparency one. So meaningful community engagement seeks to share power, share and transfer power. I like that one. And then meaningful community engagement fosters transparency and authenticity. I heard authenticity earlier too. So maybe those couple of things. Okay. Ami?
Not sure where it goes as well, but a concept around drawing from what you shared about capacity building of community and I think I just don't, it didn't come to me as you was reading through them the second time, but maybe trying to capture some kind of intent around capacity building or decision.
Is it invest?
It could be.
I don't mean in like the literal capital sense. I mean, I do mean that too.
Right, right. But that I think we captured somewhere about the extractive nature that we don't want to do, but that it also somehow educate builds capacity of those who we're engaging with as well. So I'm just not sure, but I think that could be, I think that's a part of the meaningful and also shared power. I think that was really great. So might have to think on it, but just wanted to lift it up.
Okay. And what we'll do is we'll circulate these, and we can circulate them in a version that folks can add comments to as well, so that you can chew on it a little bit, let it percolate, and then we'll come up with some final definitions. And we're also going to have a chance to sort of try these on as we move into the next phase, and we'll return back to this list to see, like, where do we see any of these principles showing up in the example that we're going to engage with. Sound good? Okay, this was great. This is like a dream list to me. Okay, should I hand it over to you now, Rosie?
I'm just gonna share my screen. Okay. Okay, so I think it's been a little bit of a while since I have come to this group to talk about the Engage, Empower, Implement, or EI. And then some of you were at the board meeting last week, and of course our board members have heard this in some capacity. So EI, Engage, Empower, Implement, I'm Rosie Ramos, the project manager for this. And this is a new funding program for us. It started in 2020 when our board was adopting the overall funding program framework at the time. And so we dedicated $3 million then. We're actually at $3.8 million now because of a board action we took 2 months ago that increased our pot, which is exciting, and made it a 6-county program. In 2022, of course, there was an adoption of the racial equity statement, and this work in EEI has a lot of connections explicitly and implicitly to a lot of the tasks that are in the Racial Equity Action Plan as well. And so we hired on a consultant this last year to help us work through a lot of the engagement that we wanted to do. So really to kind of set up what EEI is, again, it's a funding program that we really want to take these $3.8 million and invest them in the region's disadvantaged communities. That's the definition that was used at the time. And so how do we do that in a way that actually gets the money to these communities in a way that they benefit from them, in a way that is meaningful to them, and in a way that we create a process along with it, not just looking at the projects that we have now, but really doing that meaningful engagement work that we just defined here, so that we can in the future have more equitable programs. The envisioned outcomes of the EEI program is a collaboration between jurisdictions and community-based organizations, rebuilding trust, which I think is all these themes that we just talked about, community support of the project concept. So really looking at the engagement as a tool for equity. A lot of times as government, we have done engagement and good engagement as well, but at the timing of a project that is already baked, where we're seeking for them to give us feedback on something very particular, but the overall concept is already built. So EEI really is about doing engagement early on so that we can build and bake these projects together. And of course, the final outcome of actionable and concrete next steps for implementation of these projects and programs. Just to give an example of what are the things that we're thinking about when we say, you know, different projects, folks have been doing this type of work in different spaces. Our partners, or our sister agency at the Metropolitan Transportation Commission in the Bay Area, they have been doing community-based transportation plans for a long time. For those of you that attended the board meeting last week, there was a tour. The Franklin District community has done a great community playbook that did a lot of engagement with folks and really laid out what they want to see in their community. There's a great example in Cambodia Town in Long Beach that really lays out a vision for their community that has youth cafes and more trees in the community, more infrastructure that helps people get around without a car. And our sister agency at San Joaquin Council of Governments has created the Stockton Mobility Collective, where they did a lot of hands-on engagement, grassroots engagement with different organizations for many years, and eventually got them a TCC grant that has allowed them to now do a lot of the implementation work after they did that engagement process. So those are the types of things that we want to see in this region, knowing that they already do exist. We have some good examples, and how do we continue to invest in those types of projects. So knowing that we want to invest in a program that funds meaningful community engagement, we wanted to make sure that we did engagement as well as we created this program. We could have made a framework in a vacuum, but we really wanted to make sure that we were reaching out to the community organizations that we were going to ask to partner with our local jurisdictions. And so we had a lot of focus groups. As I mentioned, we hired on a consultant, HR&A advisors, and they had a sub in consulting. And they hosted various focus groups and conversations, one-on-ones with different CBOs. We reached out to about 100 different organizations in the region, and we had about 35-ish participate throughout the program. And it was really great to hear a lot of folks. Some of them, it was their first time engaging with SACOG. Some of them have already known us, but it was really good, deep conversations about what they really needed to be, for us to be better partners to them. We talked about the relationship history that they've had if they've ever connected with SACOG. We discussed the key populations that they served. A big conversation topic was the funding accessibility, and of course the communication, which really lends to the one of the concepts we were talking about, like that ongoing engagement that isn't just one-off. So what we heard, and we also talked to our local jurisdictions. We've had conversations at our board level. We connected with staff one-on-one in a forum and through a survey. And so what we've really heard is that, our grant and contract processes are challenging. The pre-application period is really critical for folks so that they can really understand what we want to do and if there's alignment to what they want to do. A lot of folks shared that sometimes they end up going for grants that don't always fit exactly in their mission, but they need funds to do a particular portion of it. And so that was a really big, important piece. Two-way communication, as I mentioned already, is really critical, and that trust and transparency, like what are we trying to achieve together? And then the staff capacity. And I think that's a really interesting note, and I would welcome that conversation individually of what we're actually meaning when we say staff capacity, because there's a lot of different needs based on different organizations. And as we develop the pre-application program, I'd really want to make sure that we are hitting those elements. And so when we think about staff capacity, it does mean a lot of different things to different folks. And so that's a place where we really want to focus on and make sure we understand really well. And then local jurisdictions, also, a lot of the same concerns, just in a different way, really want to see or understand what a project success is going to mean, what is more inclusive engagement, what that looks like for them. They do want to see better collaboration approaches. And then there was a big focus on the specific evaluation metrics that we developed out of this. And so that will be something that we really want to make sure that we do as well as we can and do it together. And they also want simpler grant applications. So this really was a culmination of that engagement step for this program that we did with the intent of meaningful engagement, really wanting to understand what folks needed to see in this type of program. We've taken all of this, the consultant took all of this and created framework recommendations, and then we're creating a high-level framework that will go to the board, to our transportation committee actually next week for adoption, hopefully. And then we can get into the development of the whole pre-application phase, and then aiming to have a call for projects next spring. In the packets, one other thing that was really important for us to build into, and our consultant did a great job at, was really talking about structural, procedural, and distributional equity, and really looking at how these systems that we navigate in as government entities and CBOs are really part of some of the issues that we're trying to address. Structural equity defined as the underlying structural factors and the policy level things. Procedural equity, which is a design and decision-making processes, so that we're trying to be more transparent and more inclusive. And then the distributional equity was also key in making sure that we disperse these funds in a fair and diverse way so that we're meeting the needs of folks across our region. And so that was 3 core elements that were created, or that were the basis of the framework. And then the framework, you received a summary of that, and these were the essentially 6 different pieces of it, looking at project guidelines, again, that pre-application process, which was highlighted as super important, project application process itself, the project funding and invoicing process, which is much more behind the scenes, but really critical when it means to being open to partnering with different agencies that are not so familiar with our bureaucratic processes. And then, of course, project execution and program evaluation. And like I mentioned, all of that is being taken into consideration. We have very specific recommendations, you know, $150 to $300 as grant awards, a CBO only pot, an advance so that agencies that have smaller budgets don't have to front the money themselves. The pre-application being, you know, a place for folks, not just the CBOs, but also the jurisdictions to come and learn together about, you know, whether that's cultural competencies or understanding some of the procedural things that we have to do for funding, really looking to create a place where both can learn together. And yeah, the application process, 2 to 3 month windows, distribution, and letting people know about this opportunity is very critical as well. Making sure that folks that don't always participate with us know that this is happening. And then metrics and review, you know, going back to that understanding of historical disinvestment, that's really critical for this program as well. And that clear partnership structures. I think what we really want to focus on as a regional entity, helping the cities and counties and the CBOs create a partnership, but also providing a place where we can help foster those relationships and come to agreements on who's going to do what role, and talking about power dynamics, which is really critical. And yeah, I think I mentioned the timeline, but we'll be doing a lot more work in the winter and spring with awards next summer. Anything you want to add, Casey?
Well, that was a really good comprehensive overview, and I just want to remind everyone the reason why Rosie is here talking about this is because we just went through what are elements of meaningful community engagement, and given that this program was initially conceived of to try to put money into communities to do that, we wanted to bring the whole process that led to the development of this framework to you so that you could really audit it, given what you've just come up with here. So that's it. Thanks, Rosie.
Thank you for that. I know there's a lot to cover. I appreciate it. Can you pinpoint for me where it might be in the pre-application period, that capacity building or that training, have you all thought about that yet, or is that something that's still in the works? And do you envision it having the SACOG's equity components, the race equity action plan as part of those like trainings for those CBOs and those folks that are?
Yeah, so that's still all very much, we're going to develop it in the next month or so.
Okay.
Well, essentially, we have until the end of the year to kind of
Right,
finalize all
right.
of that, and kicking that off early next year. But that's great points. And yeah, the intent is to, that pre-application is for the CBOs and the jurisdictions, and really trying to ground ourselves in what is the intent of this program, why are we coming together here, and how do we set ourselves up for success. And that will include going over our repriorities, our blueprint goals that we have, because our EEI program is very much a part of our blueprint implementation. And so making sure that folks understand our 3 pillars of equity, economy, and environment. And so all of these things will be part of that baseline workshops and understanding of how we then get to that full-on application of development of projects.
So can I ask a follow-up question to your question? Will the final come back to the Race Equity and Inclusion Group for review before it's finalized?
Well, the timing is a little, when's the next meeting? Do we have a next meeting?
Sorry, the next meeting is in 2024. So as of today, that wasn't the plan.
Yeah.
But, we could change that.
Yeah. Because we do take so the framework, what we can bring though are all the guidelines. So the framework will be adopted by the board Hopefully it'll go to the board for adoption next week at Transportation Committee, and then it would go the following for the actual board meeting. That is a high-level framework, and so the real nitty-gritty stuff happens in the guidelines, and so that we can totally bring back and have you look at the guidelines and have you look at the application itself as well. And I would love to hear feedback on those elements.
Folks, we can also create mechanisms for you to weigh in that doesn't necessitate a meeting
Mhm.
too, you know,
True.
like little ad
Absolutely.
hoc, like working group on it or.
Great.
So I did have a question.
Yes.
Who's going to be a part of your evaluation process? Who will be evaluating the proposals and making those recommendations?
Excellent question. So we did have that conversation within focus groups and organizations and jurisdictions alike. Everyone said that we needed to create, and the recommendation from the consultant is to create a review board or committee, whatever we want to call it, of folks that are representative of the community organizations that we're trying to serve, jurisdictions as well, and really focusing on that diversity in terms of not just having government staff evaluate, but really opening up the space for CBO representatives. Of course, if you're going to apply, there's always that balance, but there's plenty of organizations that we can ask for that might not be interested in this round. And so that's our goal, is to really have a strong community voice on that review committee, so that we can have, you know, that community check at all levels. Maybe even asking some of you to join the review committee if you have time.
Get you on that committee. See, I want to nominate you two on that committee for sure,
There we go.
or three.
Eventually.
No, I know.
It won't be anytime soon. Few months out. Great. Thank you.
Any other questions? So the plan now is to return back to our list and maybe think about or talk through or highlight any of the, I should probably take this with me. Any of these principles that you all sort of see represented in the overview that we've seen today. So what stands out to you? Let me use a different color. People can't see green.
Acknowledging the history of harm, past experiences. I think that was mentioned in the presentation.
So acknowledging history of harm, past experiences with government. What else? I thought I heard something around building a foundation of trust, like that being a
That's huge.
core
That's it.
part of it. Transparency and authenticity.
I cannot see, but
Invest in the long run. Yeah?
You had something in there about homogeneity.
Right. So recognizing that groups are not homogenous and wanting to,
I think that's really important.
here we go.
I would also offer the looking for gaps, I think that's at the bottom,
Looks for gaps.
especially with the levels of equity, the procedural, can't remember the other two, but I remember the procedural one.
Structure, distribution.
There you go.
Distribution.
Acknowledges and addresses structural barriers and mitigates for those. Thank you.
what was the last one?
The last one down here.
Yeah.
Fosters transparency and authenticity.
One before that.
Seeks to share and transfer power.
I saw that.
You saw that? Okay, great.
especially if I'm understanding seeks to share and transfer power, if I'm understanding it in my mind, that it's not just this generation that we're seeking to share, but we're trying to create a track where it goes from generation to generation to generation. It doesn't stop here.
Yeah. That's almost a combination of the investment in the long run and sharing and transferring power over time. Any others you see? Are there a couple that you would like to see as these continue to be refined? Like, we definitely want this one to be there. I mean, all of them, but like, in particular. You can answer too, Rosie.
Sorry, was your question what else is missing from this, or like what we want to have in EI?
What do you want to make sure you embed in that? Like, obviously all of it, but are there a couple that you want to lift up, like, you know what, let's like make that happen?
I mean, like the conversation around power dynamics and decision making, I think that's huge. And so I think it was already checked off, but I really want to highlight that that's really the goal of this program, is to work with communities, but really enable, not even enable, because that's not the right word, but make space for them to help us make these decisions. Because I think folks are so used to, planning processes and systems, making those decisions for folks and not inviting them to comment or even just participate hardly. And so it really is about making space for them to have ownership of the projects that we're talking about and have pride in them and want them in their communities and advocate for them, again, long-term, because this is a long-term game, right? We're talking about doing engagement planning takes 5-10 years. And so if we're thinking about projects that are going to happen in 5 to 10 years from now, maybe 15, if we're doing good engagement now and getting those pieces in the right place, we're going to see a lot more projects that people can say like, oh, I helped make that. So that's really powerful to me.
And so it seems like maybe this demonstrates that impact and returns is a piece of that too. So it's like both the power, but also like ensuring that you circle back, to use consultant speak. You're going to circle back on that. Just doing a time check. Yeah, go ahead, Raul.
I'm maybe going out of bounds here. Maybe that's why I like draft watermarks on my, but and maybe I need a little bit of Kool-Aid fruit pie. I need maybe a sugar infusion, so I had to like write down my notes. But I'm kind of thinking about like putting this into practice, right? And so this is all good, right? And so one of the things I'm thinking about is how do we, and I'm not sure what the right verb is, so I had to write down 3. How do we encourage, motivate, and excite jurisdictional and county governments that may not conceptualize community engagement in the ways that we've talked about today, right? So maybe my assumption is off, but I think I think it's might be a little bit of an easier sell to community-based organizations, and so but might be more of an uphill climb. And so how do we get you can't say like not all county governments are the same. Like they're not all there's diversity. There's different departments. There's you got the county, you've got cities, and so how do we excite, motivate them to care about this and to maybe throw their hat in the ring too with community-based partners. So anyway, it's something that I'm thinking about as we're talking about all of these different items on the menu list here.
Some of what that speaks to for me is meeting people where they are and understanding what their priorities are. I'm using community like broadly defined, like people who work for jurisdictions are also part of the jurisdictions, right? So there's an opportunity there to like make those connections between what their priorities are and how this is going to help them get there, right? And we have plenty of cases of where that has not happened. And so really leaning on those past experiences and those past challenges to demonstrate, like, if we do this better, we might be able to avoid all this other stuff on the back end. Yeah, go ahead, Ami, and then we'll transition.
I appreciate the need for the sugar rush, for sure. You know, I also appreciate your comment as well. It's what spoke to me about it was how was this operationalized? And particularly, it sounds like what I heard you say also with the government sector. And what came to mind for me was, I think that's where maybe the opportunity about capacity building. I think that is where we're very different, is where we are in our capacity to understand the meaning of equity, how we operationalize it, how we bring it to the forefront, especially with the framework that is happening. So maybe there's maybe that's an incentive too, if there's some kind of capacity or training, and then the other, that it's linked with dollars. I mean, I don't want to be that crude about it, but capacity investment in staff to do this, continue to do this work for the long term and the long run, and then also in order to receive the funding, this is what is required. I mean, that's just what immediately came to mind, because I think that gets attention. I think we don't want to trivialize it and connect it solely with, you don't get the money if you know, or the grant, or you don't, but you have to make the investment in time and effort to build your own capacity. Here's some opportunities, but also how are you also doing that as well, and asking that question, tying it to the dollars that are there for them to improve their communities and their cities. So I appreciate it.
Can I add something really fast? So that's a great question, because that is, when we talk to jurisdictions, that is, I think everyone has been supportive, but they do question, how do you operationalize it? How do I actually make this happen in my city? And it is, you know, it's a new process. Like, well, it's not super new, but it's just different. So I hear that question, and what we're going to do, I think, as Ame really pointed out, is that work that we do in the pre-application up until the day the application goes live is really trying to do a lot of that work. And where are all of our cities? Like, where can we help each of, whether it's the jurisdiction and the CBO partnership, where are they both at? How can we help mediate that? But I do appreciate that question, because it's very real. And then the final thing I'll add with the dollar side of things, federal and state programs, that's kind of also been our link, is that we're seeing a lot of federal and state program grants asking for, what did you do for your community engagement? What was the process? Was it a meaningful process? And so we're hoping that having done a process like EI can set you up for also not just coming back to additional SACOG funds in the future, but accessing more federal and state dollars, and aligning with those goals, like Justice 40 and like all the grants that even we've been applying for recently have a huge component on engagement. And so that's also the vision, and hopefully the selling point is that there is also more money to unlock if we do this right and aligned with federal goals.
And I guess I would just say, I think everyone here is that, so Chair Jennings, you started with, we're all in, right? So like, we're all in, right? But like, and so how do we get others to sort of be all in? And, this is talk about change management, right? And like, to your point around communication, and so maybe what we need, so is like, some, like, what are the minute messages that we deploy that maybe others on SACOG deploys, and one of those, like, maybe we're agnostic on like the messages, but one of them is like, hey, this is an increasing expectation if you want to get like state or federal funds, and so here's a good opportunity for you guys to practice, right? And maybe you don't have a lot of this in your community. Like, this is a great way to get started.
So there's sort of carrots, there's sticks, and I think particularly there's standards, right? I want to give you a quick example. In Seattle, they had this whole, for years, their racial equity initiative there. And this is sort of a local example, but it's still an example. They had this park that they had wanted to rebuild for quite some time. They have a similar to Prop 209, where you can't do sort of race-based sort of work, but what they did require is anyone who submitted a bid to develop this park had to include aspirational goals for diversity for that team. They didn't have to they didn't say you were gonna do it, but you had to have aspirational goals. And what they did is they drew a line in the sand. In the first round of bids, no one included those goals, and they said none of these proposals are complete. It delayed, right, building that park, but it drew a line in the sand and it stuck to it, and it raised the standard for what was complete and what was sufficient for that process. And so really start to think about what are those mechanisms, standards, requirements that you can employ that normalize, this is just how we do business, right? This is just the way that we work. It's not some ancillary thing. It's actually core to the way that we function, right? Okay. Chair Jennings, I'm going to transition it back over to you. Thanks, Rosie, for your presentation, and everyone for building these principles.
Danielle and Rosie did a great job. Let's give them a round of applause, if you will. I think there's no question we have a better understanding of meaningful community engagement. I've taken enough notes here today to write a book, and I'm actually thinking that how we can make our community better and all the things that we've kind of talked about and how we can operationalize some of the things that we've mentioned here. You know, I've got to get my hands on this list that's up here because I think with 24 hours of really reviewing this, I could give you some important feedback to this. I think all of us could. And so I'm hoping that'll be a part of the process where we get our hands on this and we have a second bite at the apple of trying to wordsmith, trying to change, trying to see what's missing, right? As far as meaningful community engagement is concerned. I don't think, what many of you don't know about me is that since 1992, I've been involved in nonprofit work. And so I continue, even as an elected official, to stay involved in nonprofit work. And I found after being in government for years, after being in corporate America for years, after being in all the different business things that I did, that nonprofit work was the greatest work that I could do to have the greatest impact. And so I stay in it because I want to have an impact and I want to make a difference in that work. And so that's just on me. But my legacy that I leave behind will be based on the work that I do, maybe some in government, but a whole lot in nonprofit. So that's just on me. But I just wanted to share that with you as I turn to Casey and ask Casey to tell us what's next in all this work that we're doing.
Thank you, Chair Jennings. So some next steps. One, as Danielle said, we will type this up and we're going to get it into a shared document that we can send out to all of you so you have some time to stew on it and to provide your comments, additional thoughts on it. So we'll send that out with some timelines for you. And then there's also 2 opportunities to engage, which you can raise your hand now. I also have some names because some of you have volunteered already, and then we'll put out an invite to the full working group because some members are not here. And one of those opportunities is to raise your hand to join an ad hoc group to bring these elements of meaningful community engagement into start working with SACOG staff on developing a rubric that eventually we want to be able to use when we are developing other SACOG programs. That is actually one of the tasks within the Racial Equity Action Plan. And it is to try to serve this goal of investing more in programs and projects that advance race equity and inclusion and engagement with underserved and underrepresented communities. So looking for some folks to work with us in between meetings, rolling up your sleeves on that. And I want to acknowledge actually that Raul and Ami and one other person, was it Elisa? It was Elisa, had joined an ad hoc group to just kind of start looking at some of the program document templates that we already have. And so we'd like to continue to build with that. So thank you for your help with that. So that's to raise your hand for working with us on, on this work in between meetings. The second option, or the second invite is for anyone who is interested in the data. We had in our last meeting back in June, we had Garrett from our staff presenting on our indicators report, and you gave feedback on equity indicators that we should try to track. So he's looking for anyone who has a data mind or interested in data to do some feedback with him as he keeps working on that. We'll eventually bring it back to the full working group. So you don't have to raise your hand now. Oh, okay, well, somebody's pointing out somebody. We will be following up, so I don't want to put the pressure on you right now because it is the end of the day and we don't have coffee for you. I'm sorry. That won't happen again.
No Kool-Aid either.
Oh, okay. Well, we were
Kool-Aid either.
thinking sugar and caffeine. Sugar and caffeine. So we're going to follow up to ask if there's interest in that. And I think that's it. Chair Jennings, I hand it back to you. Oh, yes. This info sheet for all of you, we put this together so that you could take it back to your communities, to your colleagues. If you were talking about the work that you do here at the Race Equity Inclusion Group, that you can share this as information. We will also have it on our website. And it's also hopefully helpful if you're trying to just remember, you know, what we did, where we're trying to go, because it is a lot that you're all working on. So thank you. Yeah, and I turn it
Cool.
back to you.
All right, I'll wrap it up. You got, yeah, go ahead, please.
Quick question, with the shared document, is it possible to get your presentation from today?
Sure.
That would be great to have it maybe like in reference, so that we don't go off the rails with our suggestions, but it would be good to have that, your PowerPoint. Thank you.
Totally agree. Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to wrap it up. We've lost a lot of our members, but this has been a very powerful day. I hope you agree. I want to thank you, Casey, for your work on this, and Danielle and Rosie. I want to thank each of you and all of you working group members for being here. The next meeting that we're going to have is, I think it's March the 15th, 2024, from 1 to 3 p.m. And then hopefully you have on your agenda, we go from March to June, June to September, and then September to November. So hopefully you have those dates on your list as well. If you don't, I have them here. I'll give them to you before you leave. So I want to just draw your attention to a few things. One is a receive and file, which is in your packet. It's the latest progress report on the Racial Equity Action Plan implementation. We knew that we would not have time today to talk about it, but still wanted to make sure that you had it for your review. We'll do a deeper dive into it in the full year of progress at our next meeting. Second item, you have a one-pager that describes the what, where, who, and how on this RAR report, the one we just talked about. So I don't need to say that again. And then third, is at the bottom of the agenda, you'll see that we have our meeting dates, which I've already talked about as well. So I'm ahead of myself, which means that we've had a full day and a good day. Danielle, I thank you for leading us and facilitating this. Casey, I thank you for all your work in this as well. I thank all staff for the incredible work that they've done. And then I thank each one of you, the working group. We can't do this work without you. You bring a different, unique perspective to the work that we're doing, and that is so valuable to us. And so if I had 4 ears, I'd listen with all 4 ears. But I'm going to do the best I can with 2 ears, and I try to write down everything you say, because when you say it, it sounds so much better than when I say it. And so I'm learning from you every single day to continue to do this work and make it better in the work that we do going forward. So have a safe travel home. All right. Hope you've enjoyed your day. I thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you again at our next Race, Equity, and Inclusion meeting.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Didn't use that all day.